to experience, and for them to also turn around and rework, use exactly as it is or whatever for, to be able to give to your students who might be a little zoomed out or who might, you know, need a different way or want a different way of interacting with the world right now. So in each Spark, it starts with a narrative around what is a tension that exists within the Spark. How is this value coming to surface at this moment? We always generally have a collection of Jewish sources, some educational activities that you can plug and play and use, supplemental resources, also that provide a different angle into this value, and images. And now newly minted a program outline for a way for you to actually just take this, and if you want to, just you could follow that exact template and then you could do it. I do want to share that Haley on this call, it's really important to recognize her. Haley is the one that takes everything and puts it into this beautifully formatted Spark. So she really is the spark behind the Spark. And I just want to publicly recognize your beauty and how much I love working with you on this. Really, it's like incredible. So everyone should be lucky enough to have a Haley. If you don't have a Haley, then become a Haley.
We're all lucky to have a Haley.
Okay, and then just to like share some of the M squared language around this, just to try and ground it in what we teach, is that you know, we try and bring in a conflict question around a particular value, and then we have, you know, different ways of interacting with that value, from concrete experiences, right? From like, if you participated in the chesed one, from like, go out and do this chesed challenge. What does it feel like to actually do acts of kindness and report about it, you know, or the gratitude one, to more abstract thinking around it, right? Like the source sheets, for example, which we're going to look at today. Like, how has Jewish tradition thought about a particular idea, and how, you know, how can we use that also as a framework to deepen our understanding around this particular value. Okay, great. So now, before I stop, any questions? Great. Let's dive in. Okay. So you can all see my screen, right? Great. And I'm also going to just post this. I put it into the invitation itself, but I also just want to put this into the chat box. Sorry, in case you want to follow along on your own. I'm just going to post this. Come here, little chat box. Come here. Chat box. Haley, can you do this? I don't know what's going on. My chat box is being, isn't cooperating.
We're just sending the link out?
Yeah.
Yeah. Give me 1 minute.
Okay, great. So you can all see this again, right? The hope? Okay.
We see your PowerPoint.
Okay, 1 second.
All right, that is
okay, great.
Spark.
So hope in a time of darkness. This is an you know, an homage, paying homage to Rebecca Solnit, who is a beautiful essayist and poet. She recently came out with a book called Hope in Time of Dark, or something like that. And she writes really beautifully and poetically about things of this nature. Getting lost, finding hope. she's all into those things. So this is sort of our opening thing. So I'd love just a volunteer to read through this opening narrative. Chana, can you read through this?
Hope is elusive. It is invisible at the real and hard to understand. It is irrational and requires a radical act of defiance during unfathomably dark times. We are in a moment of darkness. Let's see whether our lives have been upended and our sense of normalcy has been swept away. We don't know how or when this will end or what awaits us on the other side. It's easy to feel an overwhelming sense of hopelessness, but blindly believing that everything will work out is also futile, for then we have no motivation to apply ourselves and work towards making things better. And sometimes we are even worse off than where we started.
Okay, so I want to pause there for a second. So what's the narrative around this that we're introducing? And yeah, Chana, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say that hopelessness can be functional.
Say that again.
Rather than hopelessness simply shutting us down, it can also sometimes be functional.
Mm-hmm. As like a motivation or what?
Either a motivation, a prod, yes, something to galvanize us. At least that's what I see as the contrast, reinterpreting where we find meaning. Sometimes when you hit rock bottom, you push the reset button. So in all those ways.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, great. So Chana, you could read more. So this was yeah.
Okay, we must never forget that we may also find meaning in life, even when confronted with a hopeless situation, when facing a fate that cannot be changed. For what then matters is to bear witness to the uniquely human potential at its best, which is to transform a personal tragedy into a triumph, to turn one's predicament into a human achievement. When we are no longer able to change a situation, just think of an incurable disease such as an inoperable cancer, we are challenged to change ourselves. While this was written in the context of the Shoah, the Holocaust, there's a tension that feels so present between harboring devout faith in the face of accepting fate. In order to survive, we need both. And I guess, can I digress from the text here?
I mean, 100%. Yes, this is jumping off.
Okay, so I guess I don't know why we call the inability to change our circumstances necessarily hopelessness. And I get that there can be a moment of hopelessness, but really what we're talking about here is the ability to, how does it go? You know, change what we can, accept what we can't change, reframe what there is. If we're looking at hopelessness as a vortex, that's fine, but I don't think it's a healthy state to remain in, unless we're giving hopelessness a very bizarre definition here.
Anybody else?
It's a fulcrum, not a resting point.
I think about hopelessness that is being stuck, and because I think about the word tikva in Hebrew, just was trying to think about the root cloud of the word tikva. It's actually a neighbor of the word mikveh, and mikveh, it's a place where water is accumulating from different places. Water, it can be water, but also this root is about even people are coming from different places. So So this root is connected to different, to accumulation from different places, different sides. And I think this is hope, like when you are open to gather from different places, when you are open to listen to different voices that are coming to you, it's the opposite of being stuck with one stream of consciousness coming to you. So yeah.
I feel like hope is like a looking forward, and the hopelessness is like pulling back, and it's like this tension somehow. Like it's, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't, you know, the way in which this is sort of presenting itself is the idea that I don't think that we should aspire to live in a state of hopelessness at all. And I think that Viktor Frankl's quote also says that, right? I think his quote is a sort of an allusion to Chana, the quote that you were saying that's said at the end of the AA meeting, right? Which is so powerful, which is like, you know, you can't stay in that dark place, and all we can do is change the way in which we relate to that dark place, and change and what's so interesting, right, in that we actually get to in the text study itself is really also what's the difference between optimism and hope, right? Because hope is, it's, you know, which we say above is like, it's not, if it's just sort of like this wishy-washy, like, I hope, like in the future, like Nietzsche hates hope. Like Nietzsche's like, he's like, hope is like like kills mankind, because like it should, you know, you need to be active, and hope can keep somebody like not active. But that's not actually the way that in which I see hope. Like I see hope as really this like active working towards something. It requires so much faith at times to stay in this place of hope.
I guess I'm thinking of the quote from the Haftarah of Rosh Hashanah, Yesh tikva la'acharitech, that sometimes the hope is very far off, it's at the end. We don't realize it immediately. But the fact that we will not realize the change immediately doesn't have to relegate us to hopelessness. It sometimes means that we're galvanized from a place of bitterness. We're galvanized from a place of darkness, if we will, but there's still some sort of galvanization.
Yes, I agree. There's some sort of activeness that has to happen. Saul, what about you? I see you nodding.
As often happens, pop culture comes into my brain, and I think about like the end of, you know, Shawshank Redemption and the kind of that experience of being jailed and then finding freedom. And I think that in some ways that hopelessness is also that jail, that if your mindset is stuck in I can't fix this, or I can't make this better, or I can't I can't survive in a certain way, or I can't be happy during this time, then it's hard to move. It's hard to enjoy what life does have to offer. And you think about Frankl writing that writing what he wrote during the Holocaust, and being able to, kind of see that there were other possibilities.
Beautiful. So I'm gonna move us down. So you could tell like through this conversation that this is where we're trying to go with this hope. And obviously, like if you're working with elementary kids or second graders, this isn't necessarily the conversation that's going to arise out of it. But you could see the sort of the questions and the and where it can take you really, and where it can make you think about how you have been operating around this value. You know, during this time. So I'm going to just sort of move us through a little bit because I want us to get to one of the exercises that's in this. So similar to where Eliza was going, right? We talk about hope is an incredibly guiding force in Judaism, right? From the visions of the prophets, from like the bones will come up to modern day prophets and poets and writers, and to the fact that like Israel's national anthem is named "The Hope," right? Which is like the ultimate, you know, like manifestation of how Jews, or how Jews at one time or thought about this notion and the importance of it. And so the first way that we have to engage in this idea of hope is around a collection of texts. And since we've actually been having this good conversation, I think we won't go there ourselves. I'll just share with you that the texts that we have is one one from the book of Ezekiel. One is Rebecca Solnit, who I spoke about earlier, and it raises the question of, you know, hope, difference between hope and optimism, and asking the question of what kind of faith does hope require, and also hoping to text to self connection for the first one, and then this Yehuda Amichai poem, because you know you've always got to have a Yehuda Amichai poem in everything you do, which is when is a time that you need to vigorously protect hope, and I actually think that is like a very like beautiful question. You know, and so I'd love for you to just take a moment. We're not going to read it, but take a moment to read this source, and perhaps chat in the chat box. Why do you think that hope needs to be vigorously protected? You can also challenge the assumption that hope needs to be vigorously protected, but why do you think hope needs to be vigorously protected? If you have thoughts, feel free to chat it. Helps us survive the darkness. Remain positive. Michelle, I'm sorry your microphone's not working. I'd like to hear your voice, but alas. helps us move on and find something good. Hope is fragile and easy for other people to attack it with arguments that are illogical and that we half believe. We need protections to remember the other half. Beautiful. Great. Thank you for sharing those really beautiful thoughts. I think a baby is born with hope, and that's what helped them grow and gather from different sources. We should protect this ability of babies that grow to be people with everything that we have in society. Hope gives us reason to continue moving forward, striving to do better. Whew. Okay. So I do want to do this for the next 5 minutes, which is Emily Dickinson argues that hope inspires the good to reveal itself. And let's see a raise of hands, or if anybody has been watching the John Krasinski's show. Saul, Robin? Okay. Well, I just want to give you a little framework because you should, if you haven't, it is totally lovely and really makes me cry out of good tears every time I watch it. It's a show by a comedian. So whoever put comedian down there, I bet it was Saul. Was it Saul? No?
No.
Rob? I don't know. Yeah, okay. So it's a show about a comedian from The Office who basically said that there's so many news sources right now that are just about celebrating that are about recognizing the bad. And we know this to be true from news, right? And so he did a show that's entirely based on good news that's happening around the world. And then he goes and does good news, and it's amazing. Like he puts on a wedding for a couple who was supposed to get married. One girl was supposed to go to Hamilton. She's been waiting her lifetime. She's a huge fan. She couldn't do it, and so he brought Hamilton to her. And the whole thing is just also, it starts though with like, what's good news that's happening around the world? And he highlights these beautiful common stories of just like goodness being revealed itself, right? And I love this quote from Emily Dickinson where she says, hope inspires the good to reveal itself, right? And that like, it's like, you're just like surfacing these things that are there, and hope allows for that. And so that's basically his show is all about that. Finding the goodness and celebrating it and remembering that amidst all of the hardships, this is also going on simultaneously, and that we exist in these parallel universes. And so right here, we have this activity that is basically having you create your own news collage of how have you seen goodness reveal itself. And here are the instructions. And the instructions are: sift through daily newspaper headlines and find where goodness is revealed, and create your own front page with images and headlines from them. And we have some like where to start. If you're feeling overwhelmed, you could go to all these different sections. And then these are different methods for how you could imagine creating this collage. You could cut and paste an image. You could use newspapers lying around because, good news isn't momentary. It should be timeless. Or you could just, go on, grab a piece of paper and write it down, or whatever you want. So I'm going to just put a timer on for 5 minutes, and you're welcome to turn your cameras off. I'll put some music on. I put this link in the chat box, but I'll put it again. And I want you to go through, whether it be old newspapers that exist in your house, or why does this keep not pasting? Old newspapers that exist in your house, or online. You're going online and you're seeing something beautiful. Just find a headline, one beautiful story that you want to share with everything else. And I just put it back in here if you want to pull it up. And I'll just put back on some music, maybe my mantra again as you're doing this. And you have 5 minutes to find some sort of book, existing book, or to find something that can help reveal some goodness that exists right now in the moment. Sound good? You ready for your challenge? Any questions? Great. Okay. I send you off. Goodbye. And I'll tell you when you have about 1 or 2 minutes left. I'm not really sending you off. I'm just, you know, like sending you off in that kind of way.
But I dreamt beautiful and strong. When the world is sick, can no one be around? But I dreamt we was all beautiful and strong. When the world is sick, can no one be well? But I dreamt we was all beautiful and strong.
Three more minutes. Okay. You guys ready? Anybody want to share? Whoops. Share their collage, share their news, reveal some goodness into this room of many rooms. You're on mute.
I had some magazines here. I think it's old, but I found a quote from someone called Karen Hollenbeck, a mathematician, and she said, what you really need to do is show students how imperfect people can be and still succeed.
Hmm.
And I think it's hopeful because everyone really able to see their own imperfections, and it's making, at least me, it's making me stuck and not hopeful and not doing things proactively in order to grow. So it helps when you realize that everyone is imperfect, but still we look up to other people. And yeah, so for me it's hope.
Thank you. Thank you, Eliza. Anybody else want to share?
So I'm going to share a tweet in the chat box, but it's basically a story about an 11-year-old who likes to write letters, and writes letters to their local mail carrier.
Oh, I
And
heard
how
that.
it turns into this whole amazing story of like honoring the kid's desire to honor the mail carrier, and it made me cry. So
Thank you. Let's take one more.
I went along the lines of like humorous. I don't even know if it's funny. It's totally trite. It is, I don't know if you can read it. I can't read it backwards, but the goldfish now have 1/3 the goodness of vegetables. And I've heard a lot of parents struggling to get their kids to eat vegetables. And so that advertisement from Pepperidge Farm jumped out at me. Like, for some parents, that's got to be some good news.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So that's like another way in which to engage with this idea of hope. And then as we sort of move through there, it speaks to testimonies as a way to move through hope. Listening to people's stories, right? It can be who have triumphed through difficult times. I know that I find hope in listening to words of Holocaust survivors or other people. This is specifically a video of Palestinians and Israelis who co-founded this program called the Parent Circle Forum, which supports people that have lost children during the conflict, and they talk about how they're able to move forward. And then we look at Hatikva, right, which is the ultimate expression of hope, and consider whether this is your Jewish version of hope and whether it still makes sense to have this as the question, as the national anthem at this moment. And then we sort of end with these questions. What are we hoping for right now? What is the future that you want to see? And how do you want to emerge? And we created something similar to what something similar to what exists on Padlet, which is, here's our wishing well. And how can you add to this wishing well of something that you are hopeful for that will hopefully ultimately carry us up and guide us through this really difficult time. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen right there, and and just sort of open it up for the last few minutes for some questions, thoughts, ideas of how to take this and use it, ideas that have been percolating as a result of going through this process, or any unsettled questions that you want to know.
So how do you see this playing out? How do you see this being used? If you could speak a little more about that.
Yeah, I mean, so there is a program guide that says like exactly like kind of what we just did, right? Like
Mhm.
it even has like 2 minutes, you start with an opening quote, you do 15 minutes of text study, you do 15 minutes of another activity, and then you end with the wishing well, right? So there's a way to do it in a linear fashion. There's also a way to just, choose one of these activities as like an opening ritual, or maybe a wishing well. Maybe you want every day to start with a wishing well, like almost a gratitude practice, right? But what is your wish? What is your hope for the day? And everybody sort of shares, and you every day add to it, right? And that's a way to just use it as an opening framing. Or there's a way to just send these questions out to people to say, this is what we're thinking about. Here's some questions. Why don't you, you can respond through written, you can respond through video, you could respond through photographs, whatever is a way that sort of captures how you're feeling around hope at this moment.
Well, I like to say that as a pessimist, life is great for pessimists because life always turns out better than you expect. Again, do you see us going through a whole bunch of these values? It seems to me to take time to really internalize something. I don't think half an hour or 45 minutes can do it. Do you see us choosing one value to center around for a period of time? Do you see us shifting with each time we interact? I'm having a hard time. Again, we spent half an hour here on hope, and certainly there've been some good ideas here. I don't know whether this is enough to really bring about deep change. Is that a good way to put it? Deep change has to build on itself.
Yeah.
I can share with you a little bit how I've been thinking about these, because oh my God, they're coming out so fast. I like barely had a chance to read like last week's and like to try to do the 10 days of gratitude. But I've tried like to go pick one and kind of spend some time with it over, I don't know, like come back to it. Like kudos to you, Molly. Like this one seems so timeless, right? Like what I was thinking about when I first read this one around Yom Ha'atzmaut, it's like a totally different, and like sometimes there's an activity that sort of jumps out at me. I'm like, oh, this would be great to share with our parents, or I could adapt this for our fourth graders. I'd love to bring this to my teachers. Like I think I could bring this to them and then they could adapt it for their kids. So I've been using it as like, I don't know, I apologize, Molly, if I'm like destroying the work that M Squared is doing.
No.
But, it's like sort of handing me a curriculum that I'm able to take pieces of and pull apart, even if it doesn't like use all of it.
That's exactly right. And that's it's really a choose your own adventure kind of situation, understanding that one value is a world within itself, right? And it's like, you could spend people spend a year around anava, a year around humility, a year around kindness, and to try and pack it into like 1 hour lesson is like only going to scratch the surface of the potential of what it can be, right? Mm-hmm. For sure. That is like not at all, not trying to minimize the value at all. Just, and really seeing this as a jumping off point.
Mm-hmm. So this is sort of a starting point for an exploration, or.
Yeah, and you can do it in 90 minutes. You can do it in an hour. Like if you wanted to do like what we just did, with the understanding that you'll never go as deep as you possibly can, right? But that it still like brought up some really interesting comments and ideas. And, you know, you could take the source sheet, for example, and do a whole hour-long thing just on the source sheet, right? You could take the collage activity and have them do it on their own time, and then they come back and share with each other sort of what they're seeing in the news.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, ideas? Julie, Sarit, Eliza? Okay, well, thank you. And if you just like to close off, just to see sort of a little bit of where people's thoughts are, like what is something that you have learned, something you've relearned, or that you've unlearned, right? With the understanding that this is like a very brief something. So something you learned, relearned, and you could just type it in here, or unlearned. Great. Hope is definitely out there. Great, Eliza. Oh. Value, beautiful presentation. National anthem. Well, thank you so much, everyone. And Chana and Eliza and Sarit and Julie and anybody else, as you keep thinking about using this or how to use this, like, please be in touch. You know, we, you know, also these are meant to be for anybody to use and take and adapt as they like. And we also like to know how they're doing it and what lands and what doesn't land, you know, and happy to be in touch with anybody about them, and keep the faith.
Thank you so much, Molly.
Yes, thank you.
Learning so much from this place.
Oh,
thank
good. Thanks, Eliza.
Thank you so much.
It
Bye.
feels like years ago that we were together in Northern California, huh?
Yeah. But
Okay, thank you so much.
thank
Yes.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, you want me to send you the website link for all of them or for this one? Julie, you're on mute. Oh, your mic went out. I'll send you the web page for Hope. Here you go. There you go. You got it? Okay, great. Yes, totally share it. I'm glad you're sharing it. Oh, you want me to email it to you? Okay, will do. Okay, great to meet you. Thank you. Take care. Enjoy the waterfall.